I hope you're not getting the heat dome that we were just under in Minnesota and Michigan. How's it going, everyone? Good to see you all. We'll give like a few more seconds for one or two more people to join, but we'll just get started as we have most regions or many regions represented. No problem. Thanks for the heads up. I don't see anyone in the waiting room, and we're almost at five after. So I'm just going to say, let's go ahead and get started. So, one thing we're hoping just to start today off with is you all continue, as if you're not aware, you're continuing to implement the wage initiative. I'm sure you feel that much more than I do saying that, and would love to hear continued like learnings or highlights. Certainly, you can put out questions for folks, but I think we're hoping to get a few success stories to kick us off today, both for our reporting purposes, but also want to hear from folks of like anything tiny, anything huge, wins from the past few weeks since we met last month that you want to share.
Again, I'm going to highlight Child Care Back Office and the fact that we are getting really close to our target of being at capacity. So kudos to Sarah and Lauren for the work that they've been doing.
Thanks, Deb. We always love a shout out. Anything, Sarah, you want to add there?
I was just going to say we're so close. It really is coming down to that my registry piece, but yeah, it's finally going to happen for Region Three, or sorry, for Region One, also Region Three. But yeah,
Yay. Other folks, anything related to capacity? Are you almost there or just any wins? And we take all the wins, however small you think they are. I think they're probably bigger than you think.
I'm filling in for Caroline today, so I feel like she would have more of the specifics. But I would say for Region 5, we have had much faster turnaround rates the last 2 months, which I know my team has appreciated very much. So it feels good to feel like things are progressing at a pace that feels appropriate.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. It's good to get into a rhythm that doesn't make you go like, hello, is anyone out there? So appreciate the sharing. Other wins folks want to share? Welcome, Alder. We're just giving space for folks to share any success or wins over the past month. How are folks doing on, is turnover slowing down as far as the people go, as far as folks coming off and on? No, I see a no.
I
No.
think for us in Region 2, we actually had a lot of turnover in June and July that we're kind of catching up on. But I think part of that is part of the kind of regular school year season changes in staffing. So we'll see how that levels out in the next month or so.
Gonna say that I know in New Mexico, one thing I remember the spikes in background checks of like June, July, August, and sort of end of year. It's kind of a turnover time for staff. So not to say it's good, but I hear you, Norco. Like it seems normal, but it's went up a little bit.
Mhm.
I know we ran into a hiccup with someone actually losing their license. And so
Mm,
we've had to like halt. Well, once it came to our attention, we had someone look into like the information to see when it was revoked. So I guess there's like a revocation date and then there's like an expiration date as well, which didn't make sense to me because when it's gone, right? Unless the expiration date just means like there's no chance for them to have that 30 days to fix things. So I'm not sure, but
yeah.
we had to pause their payment. So they received July's payment, but they will not be receiving anything else moving forward unless they get their license back. But that also prompts me to ask, if the license is gone, do they just skip that month or do we have to retro pay them from when they didn't have a license because they weren't in compliance? So we're just trying to figure out what that looks like because for most of us, you have your applications turned in. You don't really think to monitor a license
Yeah.
because they were accurate and up to date when you first got them in your program. But now we're running into, do we do monthly checks where we send it into my registry to make sure everybody's accurate so we won't run into those same issues? So it's like you cross one hot coal set to get to another.
Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Mendoza. That's helpful. I had an executive coach once describe that as the labyrinth of work. Is like you're in the same line as you were before. You might be in a different place, but it can feel like, oh my gosh, where are so and on your question though, Dr. Mendoza, if anyone has any experience, I know we don't have Holly with us today, but we will definitely follow up to your specific question around back pay. Um, should the license hopefully come back online and folks resume services, but if anyone else has had experience with that, please feel free to chime in.
I can say we didn't have that exact experience, but we had a situation where a provider was a home-based provider moving homes, and so she had to apply for a new license, and the process took longer than expected, which is not surprising, unfortunately. And so she was, she did not have an active license for a couple months, and based on our region's policy that allows programs or educators to kind of receive a stipend for a leave period for up to 3 months, we were able to fit her into that kind of part of the policy. And so she continued to receive the stipend while she was not operating. And then we'll get her back up and running now that her new license is active. But we talked with Holly and Miley
Mhm.
along the way through that whole process, and they approved that. So maybe something similar could be the case here.
Great. Thanks for sharing that, Norica.
Yeah, we did end up actually speaking with Holly. Holly was the one who
Mm.
actually did the digging for us.
Yeah,
Just
she
because,
had mentioned that. Yeah.
yeah, and
Mhm.
so the thing with that, just like you mentioned, Norca, they said that if it was a process of transitioning to a new license or even moving, that they would continue the payments. But if it was like completely revoked and, us not really understanding why or no room for like a 30-day plan, then that it would just halt.
Yeah. We want to mainly use today's time as always for you all. We have a few questions around the August meeting or a few things to check in. So please continue to put, if a success pops in, please put it in the chat, and we'll have an opportunity throughout office hours for you all to highlight things that you've done or have questions for each other. So I want to just kind of move us through some of the topics for August, as we see you in person in just a few short weeks, which I can't believe it is August. I had to look at my own calendar to now to remember that. Last month, just to remind you, we shared both in the meeting and as follow up, the working definition of sustainability that we're really working with as we plan this meeting. I'm going to go ahead and put it back in the chat, but um, we want to ask you a few questions about sustainability. The first, before I pass it to my colleagues who are here that you met last office hours at Afton, is really around just kind of definition of sustainability itself and whether anyone kind of, went back and had some other thoughts that you wanted to raise today. Totally fine if not, but just wanted to pause for a moment to see if there were any clarifying questions about the definition itself. Okay, well, hearing and not seeing anyone that seems like they're really thinking about, I have a question here. That's an open question. It's here, but we have Kayla, Marissa, and Caitlin joining us from Afton. You heard about their work, and you'll get to meet them in person or continue to see the fruits of their labor in a few weeks at our in-person meeting. But wanted to pass it over to them for some questions they had. So I'll pass it to you, Kayla.
Thanks so much, Sarah. Hi, everyone. It's great to see you again. We're really excited to be in person with you at the end of this month. Similar to Sarah, it's shocking it's August, but we're here. It's great. First, I also want to welcome my colleague Caitlin, who did not join us last time, but she will be in person at the end of this month as well. And she is our resident in Michigan. So we're very excited to have her be on the team and has 2 little kids in childcare as well. So in the system. We are really focused on supporting the coalitions with thinking about sustainability and what financing strategies might exist to support your planning. And at the convening, we'll be talking about what we found in a national landscape analysis of what other local entities are doing to find new revenue, leverage existing resources, find promising opportunities. And we'll be sharing those examples and strategies, thinking about some case studies and what we might learn from those, and diving into think about how that may or may not apply to the different regions. And as we prepare all that, we want to make sure that what we're doing is actually useful to you in your planning. And so today we wanted to come back and ask, just a couple questions about where you are in thinking about sustainability planning. It might be haven't started yet, that's fine. It might be we've taken some initial steps, that's also great. But we just want to make sure that whatever we're doing in person is aligned to where you are and what would be useful. So the first thing we have is a very quick Google survey for you, which I'm going to ask Marissa to drop the link in the chat. And we just thought it'd be helpful to do like a 2 minutes if you would be so kind as to just drop a couple notes in this survey about where things are for you in your region. And then in about 2 minutes or so, we'll come back together and just have a conversation about what came up for you in that survey and also more generally where you are. So I'll pause and give you about 2 minutes to take that survey.
So I don't remember.
Ooh, we have a little bit of an echo,
Oh,
but that sounds better. Dr. Mandoka, did you want to share something?
Sorry, it looks like when I tried to rejoin, it made me join twice. So the questions on here, I don't really like focus on that portion of,
Hmm.
and so I didn't want to fill out the survey and put the wrong answers on there, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Thanks for flagging
Okay.
that. Okay, I'm seeing some eyes come back to the camera. If you're ready, just give me a thumbs up. See one. Give it another minute. Gotta learn how to do music on Zoom. I know there's a way. See another thumbs up. Thank you. Another thumb. All right. Um, Thank you all for taking a moment to do that. I hope it was helpful just to take a step back and reflect for a second, and would love to bring us all together to talk a little bit about maybe what you put in the survey, if you feel comfortable sharing, or things that it brought up for you that you think would be helpful to talk through. So really my first question is, I'm just curious, what steps, if any, have you already taken to start thinking about long-term sustainability?
So in Region 1, we have started to craft what our ask is. But where we struggle um, is the ask itself when you're in a region that has very thin margins for those developers, right? And so that's been challenging for us. So we're working. Sarah has helped with what we look at as we craft our ask, but we're also working with one of our local foundations who may have some thoughts on where to begin to do the asking. But across my 15 counties, that seems to be the biggest challenge is who are you going to ask?
Thank you. That's such a fundamental question. I'm seeing a lot of nods. I'm curious if that resonates for others and what your experiences are with thinking about where to go to ask. Yeah, Norca.
Yeah, I can share a little bit about Region 2. I haven't submitted my survey yet because I probably
It's okay.
want more time to add thoughts. But I think we're working with a consultant to develop a sustainability plan. And we're kind of at the point where there are a number of really big questions that we need to have some information about before we can move forward. And some of those are things like, is there going to be continued state funding for this program, right? If so, how much? And would it be toward this same model, or would it be more flexible? And so it's been hard for us to move forward with even developing a case statement until we have some of those things worked out, because I think figuring out like, what are we asking for? Is it this same model of we're going to continue the wage initiative? It's $300 for full-time educators. And then in addition, kind of knowing whether or not this model is effective, right? We're still just 6 months in and don't have data as to whether this is having an impact or the impact we want to see. And so I think that's where we are kind of feeling a little stuck is, do we go off on our own in one direction and say, we're going to assume there's no state money and design something that's completely our own thing? Or do we need to move forward with the idea that this state wage initiative model is going to continue and we need to work under that kind of the guidelines that exist there. So that's, I guess, where we're at and some of the things that would be useful to know to move forward.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, Barbara, please.
I was going to just follow up on that and agree wholeheartedly with Norca. I think we kind of feel a little bit like it has been such a heavy lift to get this thing going. And we've been just so involved in getting all the details and all the data and everything kind of rolling. It's a little overwhelming to try to all of a sudden kind of also come up with a sustainability plan because it's the unknown about like what effect this is having. And our donors and our funders, they're very savvy. And time you want to put in any type of a proposal or do anything of an approach, they're going to want to know, like, what's the effect? What have you seen? And we have none of that. And then to also know, like you said, kind of going in blind, well, what kind of money are we going to need to sustain it? So those are like big questions that we kind of also are grappling with to start looking into how we would sustain this. Um, and I don't know when we're going to get any kind of data results or even exactly what they're asking to know that we will be getting some of these answered. So it's difficult to approach in that sense if we're going to look at, like foundations and some of those types of funding streams because here it is like it can be a year process of just submitting an application and a proposal and we're going to need all those metrics.
Yeah. I'm hearing a lot of shared experience across, who are we going to ask? And they're going to ask us questions. And how are we going to have some answers? I'm also reflecting that the definition of sustainability is really important here to your question about what are we sustaining and what does that look like for us and how do we know that's what we want to be doing? So appreciate that as well. Oliver, I saw you came with me earlier on. I want to make sure to give you space to share what you were going to say.
Oh, I think that we've kind of just piggybacking on what a lot of people have been saying, honestly. I think it's been such a big lift that sustainability at this point has taken a bit of a back burner, which I think is why this August PLC is so exciting to hear how we might start thinking of it. I think outside of that, we've been thinking a lot about how we can build the sort of informal case for why this is so effective. So I know there's like a more statewide effort to collect the data around retention and professional development and the actual impact it's having. But I think being able to collect the stories on an individual level of the educators that we're working with has been how we've started to, I don't know, like broach sustainability, or at least being able to paint a picture of the impact that this initiative is having on some of the people that we get to work with.
Thank you. I'm hearing that, everyone's starting with a similar question, and there might be answers that folks have come up with across the regions, which is great, an opportunity to learn from each other of how you're thinking about some of those leading metrics and leading ability to craft a story. Yeah, Alder.
Hi. We have taken, I think, a unique approach in Region 5. And we've really focused in on what are we trying to sustain, like impact sustainability, right? Like what are the ultimate impact goals? And we started sustainability planning, I think, earlier than maybe we initially planned, but we saw an opportunity and we were inspired by the impact goals to kind of start working on it. And so the approach we started to take was, what barriers do we know of that prevents impact regardless of what specific measures we're trying to move forward? And then what approaches regionally or on the community level have we seen be effective at moving various initiatives forward and creating kind of like 4 pillars that we want to keep in mind on that approach? And while it's not anywhere near a full sustainability plan, it has given us some grounding of like what are the barriers we're going going to continue to need to address as we approach sustainability, as well as what are the strategies that we know have been effective in sustaining other initiatives that we're working towards this type of impact. So we identified like 4 pillars. One was utilizing community-driven funding models. And we started looking at what are some examples of those models and what types of relationships do we have for that type of structure and kind of categorizing them. How do we approach that? Another was embedding within the community infrastructure itself. So not just the model itself, but like community infrastructure as well, positioning in local organizations to lead and sustain the work. We also looked at like technical infrastructure and capacity building. So if we're talking about supporting communities, do they have the tools and systems to operate something like this or adjacent effectively, and what types of partnerships would be needed to support that infrastructure and capacity building. And then finally, that component that everyone, I know we're all stuck on, is that sustainable funding piece as well. And we started discussing what types of engagement would we need for that as well. And so we're really excited to get a template and the technical assistant in the upcoming meetings to really work on and cultivate and move that forward. But it did help us to kind of think through, we know the challenges, we know the barriers, we all have that anecdotally, we know it in the work that we do, but we did take an opportunity to gather some other community and regionally available data and reports to see like what other strategies are working and what other approaches, like where can we leverage and build on and fill gaps for things that are already working, like are there piggyback opportunities? Does it have to be presented in the same way? So even though it's taken a little while to figure out what sustainability maybe means and maybe know exactly yet, the process, having this time to think about ideas and go down the different paths has, I mean, granted, the time's been very, very full. I know Katie's up to the brim with all of the logistics, and I only have to worry about the sustainability plan. So I should add that. So I'm very excited about it. But it's nice to have that time frame of conversing openly about, like, without the set parameters yet, what could we consider if we don't have parameters? How can we think about it broadly, because we don't have the exacts yet? And it led us down some interesting conversation trails that I think did ultimately help us and have given us a framework for how we will approach it when we have all of the tools and resources as they're being kind of cultivated.
Thank you. That sounds really exciting. Can I ask a follow-up question, which is kind of what spurred this conversation in your region? How did that begin?
So it actually spurred from our coalition work, really naturally, about other initiatives that we've seen over the course of time and conversation that have wanted to have similar impact or adjacent impact, and what has worked, and being able to speak across sectors, speak across interested stakeholders and parties about, how do employers become engaged and engaged in supporting these types of things, and how do families find out about them and become engaged, and how do, providers. And so that was really what started the conversation. And I think that we have some really neat individuals across the coalition and the wage work that bring a lot of perspectives. And so we just started discussing, what do we think, what could work? If the objective is to sustain the impact, forget the money for a minute. We know it costs money. We don't know if there will be money or where it'll come from. We know all of that's true. But if we were looking at 1 or 2 specific impact measures, what are they? If we were trying to move forward, reducing turnover to increase retention, what other approaches, what other initiatives have been effective in doing that, and how did they continue them? Like, what are sustainable examples? And then having an impact on the livelihood and the real lived experiences of childcare providers. Again, what experiences, what value adds have done that? And we talked about things like professional development opportunities, increase in education opportunities, what other programs can be participated in. And we just kind of went from there and said, hey, does it have to be its own initiative? Can it be something where with the right strategic partnerships, with the right piggybacking, with the right strategies, we can fill in a gap instead of creating a whole other lane? Is that a possibility? What would that look like? Does it have to be funded stipends directly? Could different regions or communities within that region pull out, disseminate those funds differently? Does it have to be a stipend in that way? What if a program finds that the greatest impact is instead of a stipend, something like adding benefits? Can we consider these other options? And whether or not that can be a consideration down the road, it allowed us the opportunity to think creatively and ask ourselves, does it have to be? Like, what other strategies can have impact, and how have they already been successful that we can create a value add to things that already exist, that we can facilitate more accessibility or extend the services of, that maybe already has the infrastructure to continue something like this if it doesn't get to continue in the way that it exactly is? Or if it does, can we partner with community organizations in a way that facilitates a really resonating and integrated strategy for delivering all of those services and supports, essentially?
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm hearing, a lot of important steps across all the regions here. And sustainability is, as you're all noting, it's a lot more than finding the money, right? It's what are we sustaining? It's who is supporting it. Do we know it's going to have impact? How do we prove it's going to have impact? How do we talk about this story? And as we head into this convening, we're going to be focusing a lot on what have other communities across the country done and how they kind of identified creative financing solutions. But it all comes back to what it is you actually want to achieve and what's the right strategy within your context. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about, what sustainability questions are really top of mind for you right now that you would, hope to get addressed at the convening or in our one-on-one sessions after that. Or maybe I should ask, are there any particular tools or information or guidance that you would hope to receive at this convening or the future one-on-one sessions that would be helpful to you in your process?
I think it would be helpful to know if there are models from other places in the country or around the state of kind of groups of funders coming together to create a system and a structure to fund something specific, like childcare challenges or other things, and how they've structured it, like what the actual legal entity is, or if it's a series of agreements, and what kind of a process might be to, if something like that exists, to create it, or look into that possibility. That's something we're considering, is kind of this broader childcare solutions fund and a funders circle that really guides the creation and continuation of it. And so if there are models for how that's worked elsewhere, that would be super helpful.
Great. Thank you. And I would say definitely, I think we know two very well off the top of our heads. So yes. Other kind of tools or resources or guidance that would be particularly helpful to you in your region? And then just broadly, I'd love to ask, is there anything about sustainability kind of writ large that we want to make sure we as a TA team know and that we're thinking about as we kind of develop the plan for August. We want to make sure that is on our minds. Okay, this is not a speak now or forever hold your peace kind of moment. So please feel free to follow up with us an email and via the survey. We're really excited to be in person with you later this month. And what I'm hearing is there's a lot of activity happening towards sustainability across all the regions and some common barriers that you're coming up against and, things that you can't have an answer for right now, things that you need to, you know, there might need to be more time that passes before you're able to answer a question. So how can we think about sustainability planning in that context of having some unknowns? So excited to be with you all and hear about the great work that you're doing and how other regions can learn from it, as well as where there might be some common challenges that we can collaborate and work through together. So really appreciate your time and thinking through this, and I'll hand it back over to Sarah.
Thank you, Kayla. And I do want to say in August, another kind of few things that you'll be hearing about with the caveat, like, of course, we're all still working through the next steps. We will have our colleagues from MyLeap and from Gogebic Ontonagon ISD and from ECIC kind of talking about what they know, budget request kind of information. So we'll be able to have an open conversation at that time too, because I heard that kind of come through in some of the, like, what am I expected to sustain here? And so that is definitely on the table as well. And so that hopefully, love to hear the excitement for the opportunity to really step back from the deep implementation work you're doing day to day to kind of think about, like, oh gosh, what have we learned? Take a breath, kind of get on the balcony and see what you've been doing. So just wanted you to note those, points of opportunity to hear from folks about the future as well. I don't have any like thing that, I'm not saying we're planning to unveil anything or whatever, but that folks are, really going to show up and be honest and in conversation with you all about what's next and what support you need and how we kind of collectively, I will say on the ECIC front is like really thinking about what will sustainability planning kind of look like and support look like and working through those expectations and giving you some sense of that both in August and when we're back together in September. So just so you know that. On that note, and just looking at time kind of with the latter half of our office hours, I wanted you to either get an opportunity to extend if you have now thought in the last few minutes about something you want to ask about. That certainly the concept of sustainability, the subject of sustainability is still always on the table. Happy to talk about it, but getting also into implementation and knowing you have your peers here and also your TA team here ready and willing to support you in whatever way. Are there other things that are coming up, either that you've mentioned already or things that you want to put on the table as either, hey, is anyone else doing this? Here's something I've encountered. I'm not sure what to do with it. Here's a topic that I think we should really have more information about. Anything you want to bring here? I'm just going to open the floor.
I was just wondering if anybody has kind of a set communication plan to communicate with the stipend recipients, like as a general, not just about, their employment and things, but is anybody doing any kind of a program communication to the group as a whole, um, you know, quarterly or something like that? Just wondering if they have and how that has gone, or if anybody sees the value in that and what they're thinking.
Great question, Barbara. Anyone have communications plans, components of that they want to share? Are there opportunities, or I guess I would ask even like, are folks doing any communication outside of, I think what I hear you ask to Barbara is like outside of the get your paperwork, or, do this requirement, like are there other ways you're communicating back out to participants?
Barbara, are you guys paying individuals in your region? Okay. Yeah, well, so we do programs. So every month we have a communication system of on the first, an email goes out to each program of these are the staff we have. Do you need to make any changes or is everything good? And then because we pay the programs, we have a quarterly, so every 3 months we do some sort of verification process. So we need your staff to sign off saying they did in fact receive the money for these months, or in some cases, it's a bit of a more in-depth audit. I'm consistently communicating with all of our programs. I guess I don't know what piece of that I could maybe expand on if you are looking for something specific.
No, that makes sense. I was just thinking like as a program as a whole based on sustainability and some of those things, a lot of times I don't think participants and even programs even understand what they're participating in. And so I was thinking more of a general, if we could get all these people, being active participants of support and promoters and things like that, with the correct talking points and, moving forward, that they would be prepped and ready to talk about their stories and things like that needed for any type of a communication plan. So we are a little different where we pay the educator directly. So we do have the same kind of, once a month they get an email that this is expected, they have to respond, that they're still working and all those things. I was just thinking more in a general sense because, like I said, there's so many different programs and abbreviations and things like that. I just thought maybe having some type of a general communication about, thanks participating in this, and we've had an effect across all the counties and those kind of things would be helpful to be pushing out to them. But I appreciate what you guys are doing over there, Oliver. I know it's a lot. It's just we get kind of in the weeds, I think, is what happens for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one thing we've run into too with most of our communications happen with the programs. And at this point, they've gotten pretty good at like, oh, I see an email from Oliver. It's probably something I should look at. With the individuals, we've sent a few emails out since the beginning, like not many, but like one went out for the survey from, I forget who, our data people. And then another's gone out because we wanted to collect some of those personal stories, right, of how it's impacting them.
Right.
And like those emails are not a very strong way. Yeah, yeah. And I almost think like what I hear a ton of from like providers we get to work with through the coalitions is just like a text. I need a text. I log into my email once a week. Especially if they don't know like who you are. So
right.
I think that would be something to explore of like, is there a more informal way that they can receive communications, especially if you're working with individual educators? But I don't know.
Okay, thanks.
I'll say, Barbara, we don't have a specific communications plan, but I think in the coming year, in our next work plan, we may include more around storytelling and in particular focusing on wage initiative participants and really thinking about how can we collect some of their stories. And Oliver, I think, yeah, the idea of sending an email out to ask for that feedback. Did you get anyone responding with a story?
Yeah, we had some. I mean, because we're 2 regions as well, and so that's like I don't know, like 600 individuals, participants. So we got some, but it was like the rate at which I got email bounce backs, so just we don't have a good email for these people, or like the percentage of people that actually got back to us was lower than I was hoping.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I also, we pay programs as well. So I just sent out to all of our participating programs kind of we've been doing this for 6 months update here, like here's a link to the agreement you signed and the policies and just kind of a refresher to keep. And so that's in addition to our kind of, monthly verifications and all of that. But I think it's a good thought, Barbara, to think about how do we make sure that everyone who's participating knows that this is what they're participating in to begin with, right? And then bring them to the table to think about sustainability.
I mean, I know this is like to your all's point around, we've been getting the program running and now we're thinking, we're thinking about these things. I know some of the folks, like the folks in King County, we had heard from before you all started, have some approaches. So we can also do some work on the TA side to reach out and see if there are any sort of additional to what you all have shared or what you want to continue to share, exemplar, even just tools, tips, sort of things for especially kind of getting communication out that garners a response from from folks that isn't necessarily just uncompliant. So appreciate that. Other additions on communication, that thank you all for sharing, and thanks Barbara for the great question. I'm happy to take more information there. Do other folks in our last 10 minutes have thoughts of things you need help with, things you want to ask your colleagues? Okay, well then I think per usual, we will stick around to see if anyone wants to stay on for something, more small group or something you directly want to share with us. But I think with that, we'll give you maybe a chance to um, go do some self-care or do something with a little bit of time back in your day. Looking forward to seeing you all in a little less than 3 weeks in person, or many of you at least. If you do have questions, one thing we plan to bring up, but I did not, is a lot of you have bigger teams you're bringing, which we so appreciate. We think it's going to be really productive. If you have any questions or like, hey, this person's brand new, can you help me think about how to prep them? We're also here for that. We won't be throwing people right into the deep end, but also just that offer of help is out there. But appreciate it. Good to see you all. We'll see you all in person, or many of you in person soon. And we'll continue to be here if you need anything. Thanks, everyone.